Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejohn Sarowick. Sejohn, I'm having a bit of a thing right now, so
Yeah.
why don't you just talk?
Yeah, well, we could talk about the mistake I made this week, Dev, and that was I went rogue and I started listening to a lot more episodes of alternate universes, and I'm starting to get real pissed because I'm starting to realize that alternate universe Sejan is oh, he's pretty damn funny, Dev. I don't love that. Don't love that he is a much funnier human than I. You like remember last week where we ended on terrible Resident Evil jokes? Well, they found themselves in the same conversation, but that motherfucker had such a better title than I. I said something like Resident Evil Ixnay, right? And this motherfucker just whips out the goddamn Offspring reference and is just like, oh, Resident Evil Ixnay on the Zombre. And then that led to a whole fucking 20-minute more conversation about the absence of zombies in Resident Evil. And so in addition to being funnier, he's also fucking smarter than me.
Wow, I guess, you should never meet your heroes, but then, addendum, you should never meet a better version of yourself.
You should never be yourself. Period. You should just even terrible versions of yourself. You'll never be happy, no matter what version of yourself you meet.
That's true, right? That's an interesting. So American Dad's back, right? They have
Okay,
their
yeah,
new
yeah.
they have their new series is live right now,
Up with that
and
topic. Choosing.
no. It's actually hyper related to what you're talking
Right.
about never meet yourself, and it's
Anybody
the
else was my co-host, I wouldn't believe them.
it is it is they finally did the episode. So these later episodes, I'm currently rewatching through American Dad, and I've gotten to the episodes that I've only seen maybe twice at the maximum.
Yeah.
I've definitely seen them one time,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of the early stuff that was exclusive to TBS. Because pretty
Okay.
much everything up into the TBS season, I mean, definitely everything through season 8, I have
Hmm.
seen at least 5 times per
Yeah, a billion
episode.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So these are ones that I've only seen the one time. And it's strange watching season 12 episodes that I clearly remember, but I've only seen the one time. And then
yeah. Right.
thinking to the episodes that I've seen at, I've seen the 250th episode, Persona. Persona Assistant is the title of the 250th episode. I've seen that episode probably more than some episodes that I've seen in season 8, just because of how good an episode it is. And I finally found an episode like that in their 16th season that I just want to keep watching.
Nice.
And it is related to the Don't Meet Yourself of it all. It's called Dancing with My Cell, or Dancing with My Cell. I think that's how you'd say it, right? Like Billy Idol, sort of. And it does what American Dad does best, wherein it touches on CRISPR technology, the ability to code genetic mutations into a virus and then infect them into a person.
Hmm.
And obviously it's a animated sitcom, so they can have fun with it, where Jackson turned himself into a woolly mammoth, and Bullock gave himself whatever stupid mutations that Bullock would give himself, and Stan sees it as a way to make his family more like him, because he has complaints about Steve, Haley, and Francine, where Steve isn't strong enough, right? Why can't he be strong like me? Why can't Haley be as ambitious as me? And why can't Francine just be on the same page as me? So he steals the CRISPR technology and injects it into his family, and suddenly they're all big-chinned assholes like Stan
Yeah.
Smith. They're the
Yeah.
worst versions of Stan Smith. And then this episode that did a pretty heavy 5 minutes on CRISPR technology and what it is, in case you don't know anything about it, turns into a question about nature versus nurture,
Hmm.
and that Stan would be a huge jerk ass if he didn't have his family.
Yeah.
And so then the next logical step, though, is that if you have a bunch of unencumbered Stan Smiths running around, they just infect all of Langley Falls with his DNA. So suddenly the entire town has the predominant Stan Smith chin.
I like that
And
that's the one thing you keep pointing to, as if that's the point. Also, the shit attitude.
right. Well, no, but like that's the thing. But it's funny because you get to see all of these well-known, beloved characters. Like I think the furthest it goes back is to Captain Monty from season 2, episode 16. Ironically, the one that is a huge reference to Sunset Boulevard, just to tie our own timeline in with this episode. It was just great. It was this great thing, but it really was that thing where I'm like, oh, as much as I would love to meet myself, to tie it back into what you said, I would probably hate myself. And then I really think back to in high school, there were all these people who were like, "Oh, Dev, someday I'll meet a girl who's just like you." And like, no, that's not what I want. Why would that be what I want? Why is that what everybody thinks I'm aspiring to find, is a female Devon Decker? I mean, let's be honest. If I could find a woman who checked off whatever my boxes are and her name were Devon, I would hope that we could get married. And then she takes my name and I successfully create another Devon Decker in this world. And then, obviously, if we procreate, I would name our child Devon Decker. And I'd go alphabetically like George Foreman. I feel like I've done this whole bit before on the show, but it's true. I'm going to just, like, I would love it. I could create up to 7 more Devon Deckers.
Well, you would have Devon Jr.,
right?
The third at that point? Devon,
well,
but Devon Jr., Devona, Devonay.
No, it would
Devon
be Devon with an A, Devon with an E, Devon with an I, Devon with an O, Devon with a U, and Devon with a Y. And honestly, that's probably how they would be called, right? What's up, A? What's up, E? I-O-U?
Like Alvin and the Chipmunks, they go around with t-shirts on with just the one letter on them so that you could...
And then we solve mysteries all around the country. No, but it's an interesting thing about never meet yourself because... I mean, what? Yeah, we'll CRISPR the dog to be more like me too. Also, there's your friggin' that's how you make Scooby-Doo in 2021 is a Great Dane gets CRISPR'd with Norville Rogers DNA. And then
that's more like how
Scooby-Doo.
you should have made Scooby-Doo in like 2012, back when like the idea of we need to explain how Scooby can talk would have been a bigger question.
That's a good point. Nowadays it's just he's a talking dog. Get on the same level as us. The more important thing is that talking dogs exist in this universe, but not real ghost ghouls and goblins. Every single ghost ghoul and goblin is a dude in a mask.
Too far.
We can't. It's not as ambitious as the Adam Sandler cinematic universe, where it's like heaven, hell, magic, all real. All real. All of these things are real. But yeah, that's the same. It feels like you listening to yourself sort of speaks to Hemingway's old thing where like, don't let other writers read your writing. Because if it's good, I'll tell you it's bad out of jealousy. And if it's bad, I'll tell you it's good so that you never get any better.
Oh no, my plan is to go full Amadeus on this, right? As I'm gonna try and do what I can to like sabotage his work and his universe. I just got to figure out how to do it.
Oh, that seems like a safe and healthy thing to do. To try to cross universes to sabotage another universe version of yourself. The healthier thing to do would be to try to figure out the branching point that made him so much funnier than you. And then see if you can repair that damage in this universe.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it's just at some point he didn't break up with the right person or something, and then it went a little too far, and now he's got a lot more depression than I do, which is a feat. But
or maybe he broke up with the right person earlier than you did. At which point, I don't know how to fix that problem.
Oh, man.
Maybe he didn't make me spend $76 at an adult toy store on Christmas Eve.
Man, we got that Die Hard porn, though. That was real funny.
We did get that Die Hard porn. And it was a perfect gift, but there's a moment. I did a lot of driving in South Providence over the past week. So I went by Cheaters, now Zebras, and the Desire Gentlemen's Club. And I also passed what I like to call our amazing superstore. And I was with people and I related the story of like, we went whole hog at that amazing superstore that night.
Whole hog is the best way of putting it.
But like up and down, like we were like a hungry person in a grocery store, up and down every single aisle, grabbing everything that to your eyes thought this will be satisfying for the person that I'm purchasing this gift for. And then we get to the register and it was, I swear to God, you turned into Puss in fucking Boots from the Shrek movies. Hat in hand, big old eyes. And like, oh, I'm paying for this? Sure, why not? And all I have is a debit card. So then I have to have the discussion with my mother when she sees a charge. And the debit card, because it's all through Citizens Bank, everything's all linked and they can see it. She's like, really? $76 at the amazing superstore? And I'm like, it was for a gift for somebody. And honestly, that's all I'm going to tell you. You don't need to know more.
Oh, fuck, man. How does the idea of like a sex shop or you mentioned like Cheaters, like a strip club, like how does any of that exist in 2021? Like, how are we still like, how are we reconciling the existence of these kinds of places in a world in which we've tried to, I don't know, like, it's weird because I would say one half of the people around here would be so against it they'd burn them to the ground, and probably in a lot of places have attempted that. And like, but then the other half of this, people are so fucking like open and wild about their shit that they're just on fucking like Twitter, like asking anybody got a dildo I can borrow. So like, what's the point? Like, also, not to mention the entire fucking porn industry has gone digital.
You know where I bet wrong on? I bet wrong on escape rooms being like the first casualty of a pandemic. Because ain't nobody want to go get locked in a room for fun after being locked in their rooms for health and safety reasons. But, I mean, I'll be damned if the Riddle Room isn't still on my Facebook trying like, come on down.
Yeah, no, the thinking out here in Utah, no fucking joke. The thinking out here was escape rooms were some of the few things that groups of people could do together, because as long as they all like agreed like 2 weeks in advance to sit by themselves in their own damn locked room at home before getting locked in a room together, then they were like, then we can go do an escape room together and we can keep it contained and watched over. Like we can keep a good handle on COVID, because apparently we could treat COVID like a fucking like bad dog and just be like, as long as we keep it in check for 2 weeks, so that we can control everything about it.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong about, I don't know how sex shops exist in the modern world, especially on the most holy of days, Prime Day, which is now 2 days long. And I'm sorry if I'm opening any old wounds for you, not old wombs, old wounds for you as a former employee of Amazon. Were you employed during a Prime Day, or?
No, fucking luckily I bounced out. Well, I whether I've told the story or not, once you watch a deaf lady break her arm and get left on the floor for 45 minutes, you tend to decide to just quit that shit.
Oh, wait, but they have that one deaf guy in all the commercials who's trying to use people with disabilities and make the job safer and more accessible for them. Are you telling me that that's propaganda?
There's a chance, Dev. Well, this little tidbit about Prime Day is for your eyes and your eyes only, because by the time this comes out, everybody else is going to miss this. But right now, for $16, you can get all 6 seasons of Ultimate Spider-Man on DVD.
What do you mean Ultimate Spider-Man? Like the Disney one?
Wasn't that the name of the Drake Bell one? Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So.
Yeah.
Ultimate Spider-Man to me is the one where Neil Patrick Harris was the voice of Spider-Man.
Yeah. It's a little. It was a little bit of a like. I legit didn't buy it today because of the Drake Bell situations that are going on right now. And so like I maybe you don't want to buy it, but man,
dude,
it's a shame.
Please tell me what's going on with Drake Bell. It sounds like the perfect pommel horse spring to a topic I want to address.
Yeah, it's not as fun as the topic you want to address, but yeah. So over the years, there has been some weird. There has been a sliding scale of Me Too, right? Like there's been this idea that there's been some stuff that has come out, and the more knowledge that we've gained about it, we've learned a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and certain people have kind of slid up and down that scale depending on what's going on. An extreme example of that is Johnny Depp, which one day we will all have to address as a people, but right now we seem to be just kind of sitting on our hands, rightly so. But like when all of that shit went down with him and Amber Heard, first there was the initial allegations, and everybody's like, Johnny Depp is an asshole. Then there was like, oh, Amber Heard's kind of full of shit, so maybe Johnny Depp is the hero in all this. And then it kind of came to light that like a lot of the like judges and personnel, lawyers and stuff like that were like, well, no, he's not a saint. Like, so it's somewhere in the middle we're going to land on like whether or not we all want to put up with that, right? Whereas you have somebody like Harvey Weinstein, boom, straight out the fucking gate. Everything about him is terrible. We have nothing to do with him. We're done. Like, and so everybody's going to have to kind of decide what they will about this. We've had these discussions in the past. We've talked about Mel Gibson before on this show. Like, you're going to have to decide whether or not you're going to be like take in media that involves this person or not. So with that said, there's been some weird stuff with Drake Bell in kind of a lot of this. First, there was some allegations that he was using his position to basically like what's the service I'm thinking of, like OnlyFans, not OnlyFans, that's not the one, but like, we're basically requesting like pictures from inappropriate pictures from underage fans and like using his power to do that. And then like those allegations seemed to get dropped really quickly because they were proven pretty false. One girl that called him out for a bunch of that shit turned out that she was like 19 when it happened, and she freely sent stuff. And like, again, that's not to say that there's not a position of power play there that needs to be examined and questioned, but like a lot of the allegations that were put forth were quickly
Disproven.
questioned.
Yeah.
Well, the disproven's that's not the right word either, though,
okay,
because something definitely happened. It's just the problem is that without all of the details, without being involved in the story, we don't know exactly what it was. And the other weird part about it is that as much as she quickly dropped a bunch of shit, he also ran off to South America for a year and a half.
I mean, South America is beautiful this time of the pandemic.
Well,
so can you blame him?
The argument then became between the idea that there was a fucking pandemic on, but even before that, his idea of leaving. He is super big in South America, like huge in South America as far as an artist, much bigger than he is music artist, I should say, than he is here in the States. So, like, also he could have just been going to just be around where the audience actually wants to go pay to see his shows. So it's this whole up in the air thing. Well, he finally came back to the States, and only within the last couple of months has found himself once again on the wrong side of the law with a couple of other accusations that, again, evidence is not like freely given, nor should it be for people. So like, do your research and figure out what you find is real and what is not. I'm just here to say that right now he's in hot water. So this all leads to me today looking at this like 6th season availability for Spider-Man, thinking $16, normally 50. That's fucking rad. And I love that version of Spider-Man. And then I was just like, but if it turns out this guy's an asshole, I want nothing to do with this. Like my love of a good Spider-Man story is quite large. But there's plenty of other versions of Spider-Man that I enjoy / care more about / don't care as much about Spider-Man as I do about the idea that if it turns out in 5 years that this person sucks, I don't really care anymore. And like, that's where I have decided to land on this. And it's going to be the same thing for a lot of other stuff. I was just talking to somebody about Baby Driver there, who's going to be in the new version of
Ansel Elgort.
Who's going to be in the new version of West Side Story, brought up because I was talking about how much I loved In the Heights. And West Side Story as a show has a much more problematic history than In the Heights, as this production does, just because somebody like Steven Spielberg coming in and wanting to tell this story, which is great, but like we've discussed for decades now how West Side Story was not really the right way to tell that story, And then there's some questionable ideas behind behind what's his nuts that wrote that one. Not Leonard Maltin. I was about to say Leonard Maltin. What's the guy's name
That wrote
that
West
wrote
Side
West Side
Story?
Story? Yeah.
It's not
Uh,
Sondheim, right?
no, it is definitely not Sondheim. That
Andrew
is
Lloyd Webber.
nope,
It's
nope,
not that
nope.
either. It's
Fine.
who is it?
Give me
Oh,
one second.
Caesar's gonna look it up.
Leonard Bernstein.
Leonard Bernstein.
Sondheim does do the lyrics. I'll give you
Okay,
that.
I
But the music is Leonard Bernstein, and Leonard Bernstein famously said about that the way that he got involved in that story is he spent like a week living in the worst parts of like New York and like the ghettos so that he could become one with those types of people and take that for what it will. like and that is how he wrote that story. So like it's always had like a problematic history as a show. And then on top of that, we now have learned a lot of weird stuff about Eggcourt. Is that how you say his last name?
Ansel Eggert.
Eggcourt, whatever. About him and the ways in which that he has kind of weirdly mistreated people both on set and off set and things like that. And so there's a whole bunch of weird shit wrapped around that because that fucking they were banking on that being the thing to go up against something like In the Heights. That was going to be like, the traditional movie musical that was going to be kind of working in that same field, that same oeuvre in terms of the politics. And now it's just gone to pot because of just like everything about it. And yeah, so that was the conversation we were having is like, I bet what happens now is because not enough people love West Side Story to care enough to save that movie from any controversy that's now come up around it. I could be wrong, but I'm betting it's going to be one of those still award season releases, but it's going to be one of those ones that kind of like falls out into theaters. People forgot was coming, and then like we don't talk about 2 weeks after it's out.
As long as Tony doesn't need to have his hair done up so a patch is released, it will probably go the way of Cats. My question, though, and I think I may have just answered it with my hilarity, is Ansel Elgort playing Tony?
Yeah.
Ansel Elgort playing Tony in West Side Story.
Yeah. Yeah, I like I said, the whole movie was always every step of the way people being like, "Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that?" And so like now here we are. Is like, yeah, we don't need this.
No,
and like I said, I could be totally wrong about this. Like I have been definitely wrong about this sort of shit before. So I won't be surprised if I'm wrong, and so I won't sit here and say like I guarantee you this thing will fall on its face. But I personally am not going to give it the kind of reverence that I specifically did for something like In the Heights or even Hamilton that came out earlier.
I mean, you've blown my mind with, first of all, I heard whispers of West Side Story being remade by Steven Spielberg, and that's pretty much where I stopped, probably because of lack of interest. I don't hate West Side Story. I historically played Tony in a classroom version of West Side Story my senior year when I finally got to take a drama class. And I don't know what to make of this. I'm turning the Say Report into a bit of a therapy session right now. The only person who was required to sing any of the parts in that show was me. So like okay. There was a moment where I had to just do Maria in front of my, it was mixed grades, but it was like a drama 1 course my senior year of high school, and the teacher's like, "Yeah, you're singing Maria." And I'm like, "Oh, am I? Nobody else has had to sing."
Yeah.
But I mean, I can do it. I'm Devon Decker. And I did it, and nothing ever came of it. I don't know what the point of that was, but like, there's that. And then there's always, here's what fucking sucks about West Side Story in my personal timeline, is every time the band teacher was out sick, air quotes, usually playing a gig, and I know that because I would be responsible for booking things when I was in trouble. sort of makes sense that I do the job I do now when I think of the fact that, like, your detention is here and arranging stuff for this, and like, oh, so you're not going to be in on this day? Great. I can't wait to watch West Side Story again. And then in like an 80-minute class, we always got to see the first 80 minutes of West Side Story.
Yeah.
So I don't think, I mean, I've seen West Side Story complete. It's probably the musical I've seen the most on stage as well.
Yeah.
Because it just, everybody, they did that Trinity rep just so many times, and I would just be handed tickets to go see it.
Yeah.
And it's like,
one of the versions they did at Trinity is I think one of the best stage musicals I've ever seen, in where they did it in the black box upstairs, and they used paint rollers to like paint the stage to like, instead of making a set. So like Our Town style, it was just like black boxes and a ladder on stage as far as actual props. But to let you know like where things were and where placements were, they would straight up just like roll out the words like street here, so that you like knew that they were on like a street, right? And they did it in like black light paint, so they could change lights and they could paint over things. And then the end of the show, like they showed the whole stage painted in like all of this basically crazy pattern because of everything that had been painted over. And it was a pretty phenomenal like setup for West Side Story. But all of that predicated on the fact that I had seen West Side Story a million times, and that at least made it interesting.
Yeah, I saw that it was chalk that they used, actually. They put down a whole chalkboard style thing on the ground, because I worked on that show briefly. Brief. Because my friend, we auditioned for, I want to say, The Normal Heart, and then he got real into working at Trinity. This was before I was in college for theater, so he was a stagehand on it, and they needed bodies to like set up and strike it. So I got some extra money and free tickets to do that, and it was like, this is cool. But then like when I saw it, I'm like, this is the only cool thing about your production of West Side Story.
This is the only interesting part. Yeah, but that's what I mean, is like West Side Story, like I'm sure there are people out there that it invokes a sense of nostalgia, a love, all of that good stuff, right? Like and those people will probably go out of their way to see this version of this film, which is why I don't want to say that it's going to just be a flop or anything nonsensical like that. Like, you're talking about a piece of cinema history that's being remade by Steven Spielberg. I'd be stupid to bet against it. My thing is, I don't think it's going to be the like groundbreaking movie musical return to Rodgers and Hammerstein style theater that it was talked about when it was first announced, considered, whatever, because everything that's kind of come out since then. I mean, in addition to the fact that we as a country have taken a huge political stance, I won't say that we've changed our opinions about the PC culture and things like that, but we've put our foot down a lot more in the last 2 years than we ever had before, right? And so, like, because of that, and then you add to that all of this weird shit that's come out about different people involved in the project, it's just, it's going to be too weird for people for it to ever hit as big as they, I think, intended it to when they first put this whole thing together.
Its target audience is going to be, well, I want to say Titus from Kimmy Schmidt, but like that character, that Titus's character in Kimmy Schmidt, that represents a whole archetype of theater person who like ironically likes things or hate watches things. It's gonna be the people who, I can't remember what the name of it is. It's the Copperfields now, but there used to be a bar in Johnston, Rhode Island. Local references get you local work. That like changed hands all the time. And the first time I ever went there, it was insufferable because on the karaoke night, all the theater kids from Rick went to this bar and tried to show how great a singer they were.
Right.
And it was like the absolute worst experience. And then after I went to the sea, I came back, and that's where my friends, like I made new friends when I came back from the ocean. That's where they wanted to hang out. And that was cool. Like, it was cool having a local bar that wasn't in my town anymore, and like being known and all that. And then the DJ who did karaoke, he was more of a DJ who like if you do karaoke, we'll let you do sets on other nights of the week.
Yeah.
And we got to talking and became very close because that's kind of what I was doing on the cruise ship, right? So we had a lot to talk about. And he's like, you got to come to a karaoke night. And I'm like, I really don't want to because I know what they used to be like. And he's like, oh, they're still like that. I really just want you to blow them out of the water. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'll go with that, DJ Skeeter. His name was DJ Skeeter. He didn't even have bluish skin.
Did he at least honk a lot and wear the shirt? Like, come on, man.
Everything else was there. I'm not gonna lie. And then I went and he picked a song for me, and it was Meatloaf, and I had to do Meatloaf completely undone. And you could see all those little theater people kind of like shrink away. And it's a weird moment that I have in my life, and I'm not sure how I got to it. Oh, those people who shrunk away, who the best they're going to be performing is at karaoke at some local bar where they think that they're, king poop. King poop. Mm-hmm. King shit. I can say king shit on my podcast. Those are the type of people who made Cats a weird success and who will make West Side Story a weird success.
Well, it's this, and when NBC touts how they had all of those television musicals that did so well, so they kept making more, and they couldn't seem to figure out that the reason they were getting watched was so that people could then tweet shit about them, like about how much they were not enjoying them. Yeah, man, I know but I think this past year, like, I think that might have taken a lot of the wind out of those kinds of sales. You know what I mean? Like you point to Cats, but that was just pre-pandemic, right? Like it was, and I think that there was a lot of come to Jesus this year for a lot of us, where we all started to realize, like, is this really worth it? Is it really matter? Does this, and I'm not saying that we're not going to get back to the bullshit. We are human beings, and at some point more bullshit is going to arise. But I think we're going to reevaluate for a while and reconsider. I don't know how much, because when the pandemic first started, a lot of that stuff was like rampant. They were like, oh yeah, let's hate watch all of Friends now and then like tweet about that since we're all stuck at home, and that stuff. People put the kibosh on that shit quick because they were like, no, I am sad. I am alone at home. I do not have the ability to blow off my anger with my friends, my anger at you for hate watching this stuff with my friends. I'm not putting up with this. And so a lot of that sort of stuff really, really, really got like shut down really early. And, a lot of people that were doing it, they were doing it so that they could then be like you said, like popular when they went out to the bar. But when you can't go out to the bar after you've done this for 3 hours, you're just left to sit with yourself and think about what you've done. So, like, I really think that this past year has taken a lot of, like, a lot of that shit off the table. The idea of the hate watch film, the idea of the hate watch TV show, of the hate watch movie has, again, not disappeared, but it is not as rampant as it was beforehand.
And interesting that you say come to Jesus moment, though perfectly cromulent turn of phrase and make it. I think NBC trying to get away with replaying the John Legend Jesus Christ Superstar during Easter of the pandemic, the first Easter of the pandemic, because we had two. That was, I think, the moment where everybody realized this has a shelf life. And not on the outside, not where we are, but in TV executive boardrooms where they're like, why didn't people watch it? And it's like, because it's not fun to beat up on the same thing twice.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to watch a rerun. We'll find something new to poke and jab and jive at. And I think that's why we haven't heard tell of any of these coming, and why they're kind of trying to gear them towards television and streaming.
Well, and I think one of the biggest things that you saw people attempt it with and it not work was Hamilton. For say what you will about whether or not you personally enjoyed it, we saw some people try and like do the cat fight, like bitch fest about it when it first came out, and instantly people are like, nah, not interested. Like you can feel this way about this movie, but you don't need to be on Twitter talking about it. We don't care anymore. And like and since then, like, you haven't seen it too much in terms of like big releases and stuff like that. You know, we did see Wonder Woman 84 and we did see Mulan like face like criticism, but you didn't see the people sitting there and tweet for 3 hours straight while they watched those movies.
Yeah. Because at that point, if I'm going to tweet about something straight, like why wouldn't I do something else?
Why wouldn't I do something I want to watch?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If I mean, especially at the time where we were in that. But also, I think that allowed for the criticism and the critique to be purer in a way that I don't love that term, but it felt like it came from a place of like
more meaningful.
Yeah.
It was more meaningful criticism. You know, people want to throw the word constructive criticism around without ever actually using constructive criticism. And I didn't love everything that was said about either of those movies. And I also am not a huge fan of either of those movies. So, like, that says something. But it was not, like I said, it was not at all like watching some of this stuff early on. Even like Cats last year, I have no love for Cats. But the amount of people out there that were just like, let's go watch Cats and shit all over it, I was done. I was done.
The only reason I saw Cats in theaters was because I heard about the patch.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
edit. Yeah,
I need to see it before that happens.
Hey man, it's the same reason that I saw that Will Arnett dog movie.
Show Dogs.
Show
Appropriate. Let's raise a glass to, I know the name of the dog, but all I can think of its fake name, Jennifer Aniston. But the dog that won's real name, I don't know. People didn't know how to deal with the fact that it was a lot of fur. There are some good mashup and supercuts of news people not knowing how to take that dog that won the Westminster Dog Show. I can't think of its name right now. It's a beautiful dog. I wouldn't want it because I get sick of my cat shedding everywhere, and this is like 4 cats worth of dog fur.
Oh man. Yeah. So we end up in this weird time where like a lot of stuff is being put out there with much more forethought and heart in it from the people creating it. And as far as audiences go, we're being a lot more receptive. I don't know how long that's going to last. I don't know, but it is very apparent right now that it is part of it. It's in the water.
Cool. I'm going to use that as my springboard to talk about something that blessed us all on June 17th. Well, all of us who have Paramount Plus, I suppose. Not everyone. And that was the reboot of iCarly.
Yeah. Well, and you say reboot, but like they're doing the weird like sequel reboot with it, right? Like it's not a new team of kids.
Right. It's true. It's not Saved by the Bell, which is an actual reboot. I guess it's a continuation. It's a Murphy Brown. It's a The Connors. It's, I can't think of a third
revamp.
one. Yeah. It's not even a revamp. It's a revisiting because it is just them older. And it's weird. It's super weird. So how familiar are you with iCarly?
I was about to say, I missed iCarly. It's not that I'm not aware of it. It's not that I know the meme, her with the Cosmo at 7 in her hands, like nodding at the computer. Like I know the oeuvre, the concept, all of that stuff. I could not tell you a single plot line from that show. I only know this because Zach was very confused about where the parents were at all this. Her dad is in the army and her mom is gone.
No.
That's all I could tell you.
Her father is in the Air Force, but for some reason is stationed on a submarine. Which is a comment that they made in the first episode of the revamp or the revisit. Where
do
I'm
they
like,
address that? Do they address it's weird, or do they let it just?
The first time that it was addressed is weird because I always thought it was weird. Where she's like, "I'm going to go live with my dad in Italy on a submarine." In the final episode, I'm like, "Her dad's in the Air Force," and I was shushed by the other people I was watching the finale with, and I'm like, "This show used to be good, guys. Remember when this show was good? I'm glad it's over."
Oh man.
So iCarly, I didn't know anything about it until season 1, episode 18, I Kiss, where their producer. So oh God. So I gotta backing up to the basic story of iCarly. iCarly is about Carly Shay, Sam Puckett, and Freddie Benson, 3 kids who are doing an internet web show.
Right.
And they're doing it in like the infant days of YouTube. Like to the point that iCarly is not a YouTuber.
She's a blogger.
She is a
vlogger.
She
right?
has her own website. You go to iCarly.com and then there will be a new episode every day. Or I think it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Every episode they're filming episodes of the show, and you're just left to figure it out. But I think there's one time where they're like, we post new content on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
Yeah, but by making her an innocuous vlogger, this means that they can make jokes about YouTube, they can make jokes about Tumblr, they can make jokes about what was the Google one for a while that started with a B, Blender, whatever it was. But yeah, so like, but it allows them to touch on basically like kids and technology, right? Like social media as a larger concept.
Right, but that's just so strange to me because. Well, we'll get to it.
Well, eventually you get shows like Bizarrevark, where it is straight up just, we make short form comedy content for YouTube. Blah. And so, like, that is the thing that they do on, like, Bizarrevark.
Right. And that's interesting that you mentioned a Disney show, because there are 2 episodes of the series. One where they're trying to buy iCarly to put it onto a network, like it's going to become a real TV show. And they're like, this is how it's going to be changed and everything, and they don't want any part in it. And then there's another one where a Disney analog has started doing a show that is basically iCarly. So then they're going to travel there and make them stop creating it. And that episode goes as far as to have her older brother Spencer, because she lives with her older brother Spencer, looking for the frozen head of the guy who owned this company.
Carly and Spencer strike back. I like it.
The show is strange, but that's the most important thing, is that she's not on YouTube. You go to iCarly.com to watch her videos, and then somehow she becomes big enough that Michelle Obama's on an episode of the web series. Because her girls are fans, and I'm going to be in the Seattle area. This is all real stuff. So in I Kiss, the 18th episode, Freddie Benson, who's their producer and cameraman and editor, really the one who does all the behind-the-scene work for the show, where Carly and Sam are kind of the talent, he is made fun of because it's revealed at school that he's never kissed anybody. Classic 2006 storyline where he's never kissed anybody and now everybody's making fun of him. And then Sam has this nice moment with him out on the fire escape where she's like, and now Sam's the bad girl. She's the rebel. She's, you watched Girl Meets World, right?
You know what the weird thing is? I actually know Sam because of later shit that goes on in the like weird Nickoverse of Victorious and Sam and Cat and stuff.
Yeah.
And I do have some weird recollections of that character from that. But not much more. But sorry, but yes,
it's okay.
Yes, to answer your question.
So Girl Meets World, right?
Yeah.
The Corey Matthews' daughter is named Riley, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's her blonde friend's name?
Sean Hunter. No. I don't.
For all intents and purposes, yes. But
yes.
Okay, so Sean Hunter, we've established that's kind of who Sam is. Okay. Sam is a Sean Hunter-esque character, but as a female, and she's been in and out of juvie. She's
Maya,
like,
by the way, just
was it Maya? Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, because the first episode I watched of Girl Meets World, I'm like, so is just iCarly, and that pissed off Dale, and I'm like, I'm gonna call him like I see him. They clearly lifted some character archetypes, and Maya is Sam.
iCarly lifted the character archetypes for Boy Meets World. To
right.
Be honest.
Apparently, yes. It's all cyclical and it's all eating itself. It's disgusting. Really, I think they maybe lifted from Sunny with a Chance if we're really going to be assholes about it. But yeah, so Sam, who's this bad girl, like tough person, reveals to Freddy that she's never kissed anybody either, and she's like, "Why don't we just do it? It just doesn't need to be anything special, but then we'll both have kissed somebody, and it'll be nothing." And the other weird thing is that kiss almost feels like innuendo for having sex.
Yeah.
Like the way that they're treating it really doesn't feel like kissing. It was this weird thing that I came home from work and Dale was watching it and I'm like, I'll watch. I don't give a damn. And then by the end of it, I'm like, well, I'm sold on iCarly. Sign me up. And then like for me, and I'm not someone who ships characters, but they did a really good job shipping Sam and Freddy as this couple to like aspire to have happen. They had the Sam and Diane will they or won't they in the show.
Yeah.
And eventually they get together and then eventually they separate, but then in the end it's like, I do kind of like you. But then there's also the fact that Sam kind of has a crush on Carly's older brother that like is weirdly addressed in ways that are kind of uncomfortable because she's like 15, where she's like, if I didn't have a little crush on you, I'd punch you in the face right now. And he's like, I'm sorry, what? And he's like 26.
Yeah.
So like there's all this weird stuff about iCarly. Like it always felt a little bit more adult than it should have been.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't at least talk for 2 seconds about why Sam is not in the like reboot, and the fact that like while all of this is going on, we are learning some terrible shit about Dan Schneider, just to kind of keep the ball rolling on talking about some of the Me Too stuff that we've learned. But the guy that ends up producing all of these shows for Nickelodeon ends up ungloriously leaving the network because there's just some really weird accusations and a lot of evidence of those accusations of him being just inappropriate with a lot of these younger actresses.
Which, and again, to tie it all together,
I don't
children.
mean to hide it.
Yeah.
Right. I don't mean to hide it behind like these young women. No, like these kids. Like he is. Yeah.
But also to then tie it further together, Drake Bell also comes from that Dan Schneider universe. Drake and Josh is the predecessor to something like iCarly. So like it lends a credence to all that stuff that you hear about Drake Bell, just because growing up as a showbiz kid, he was exposed to it through the actions of someone like Dan Schneider.
Right.
Which, yeah, this is all fun, right? And then just to think that Britney Spears' younger sister, Ashley Spears, is fired from Zoe 101, and the show is unceremoniously canceled because she gets pregnant. Because Nickelodeon doesn't want their children actors to grow up ever.
Yeah.
It's all kind of gross and disgusting stuff. And then they hired Jason Biggs to be the voice of Leonardo, as if Jason Biggs didn't have a past. I've lost the thread. Back to iCarly. So we get to the revamp, right? And the biggest thing that is missing, the obvious secret sauce that's missing, is the Sam Puckett character.
Yeah.
Because in most of these shows, very rarely is the title character the most charismatic one. They're sort of the straight man who is there to like deal with the situations their wacky friends and family get them into.
Right.
So without Sam Puckett being there, you just kind of have Carly Shay and, you know.
Well, and so that's where like I had gotten the impression that they were doing trying to, rather than continue iCarly, grow it up, like they like you know what I mean, like turn it into something that is meant for an audience more this age. Like it doesn't feel like it's a show that is meant for 13-year-olds anymore. It feels like it's a show for people that are 20 somethings now that were 13 when the first show was on.
It's meant for the 13-year-olds who are watching it at the time. Right. 100%. It is not like everybody kind of lost their mind that Carly said bitch. I read a whole bunch of Twitter trending about I can't believe Carly said bitch, and I'm like, Well, in the first episode, they talked about sleeping with people
Right.
and were drinking like normal people of that age would be drinking.
Right.
And I think the worst offender is that, in a way to like definitely make it look like they're older, Freddie Benson is twice divorced and has like a stepdaughter he has half custody of.
Hmm.
So like that stepdaughter is to bring in the younger character in
Yeah.
case you're watching it with your kids now.
Yeah, well, but like it's weird. You know what? Everybody else started watching iCarly. I started rewatching New Adventures of Old Christine.
Well, I'd like to watch New Adventures of Old Christine because that's the person who did Call Your Mother.
Yeah.
And Call Your Mother had some good stuff, but clearly didn't know what it wanted to be as a
Well,
show.
and so New Adventures has a little bit of that issue for the first like 3 or 4 episodes, but it finds itself like pretty quick. Once Wanda Sykes shows up, anybody interested in watching that show, the second Wanda Sykes shows up on that show, it realizes what it wants to be for the rest of that show, which is really quick, really soon. But so with that, right, the idea that like watching this woman figure herself out is pretty stock standard sitcom fare, and it works really well when it's in the right hands. And don't I think Miranda Cosgrove, like I think this is a good group of people to be doing this kind of show. I think it's super interesting that they've decided to go this way with it. And like it's really weird to me just to address the kind of stuff that you're talking about of people like calling out and being like, oh, they're saying bitch and she's drinking and all this other stuff is going on. What's really interesting to me is like I think back to like Modern Family, which was really celebrated, still is celebrated for the ways in which you got to watch the kids on that show slowly grow up into the adults on that show. So like it starts off being a show that's about like, oh, these adults and dealing with these little kids, and then eventually you realize, oh no, I am connecting more with the stories of the kids now than I ever am with these people going into their 50s, going into their 60s, right? And so the show gets lauded for that, and it does it, and it deserves it. It does it really well. It's really interesting to watch that. But I think what the difference is like we got to watch it in slow motion. It didn't just come in and hit us like a truck that, oh yeah, these people are adults now.
Yeah. And it's not something that bothered me. It felt very artificial, like look how old they are. Freddie's
Yeah.
been married twice and divorced twice.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, I mean, that really feels out of character for him. I mean, I guess there was sort of the last episode. The reason why I'm done with iCarly is that last episode where I already talked about she's going to go live on a submarine, but her father's in the Air Force, and I got shushed for pointing that out. Is she kisses Freddie before she leaves?
Yeah.
And like that felt so How I Met Your Mother. This was the plan in the very beginning of the show, was for them to wind up together, but then we found something better. Other two characters had better chemistry with each other, so we
the Rachel and
followed
Joey
that
problem.
thread. Yeah, exactly. It's the
Yeah,
Rachel
yeah.
and Joey. I guess problem is good. Yeah, so then they kiss and I'm just like, well, I'm fucking done. Because like she grew to not be the type of person who would do that to him. And we've seen her in all these relationships, and clearly they're just friends. So like romantic kiss between them in the final hour? Like fuck you, iCarly. But like now that Freddie is twice divorced and they're working together again, it really feels like that might be a storyline somewhere down the line.
Right.
And that doesn't make me happy. It feels like, oh. And then because Jeanette McCurdy has said, I'm not going anywhere near this, right? And they wrote her off by saying she's with a biker gang because good job, good writing.
Hey man, it leaves the door open. Better than other options.
That's true. At least they didn't kill her. That's very true. Looking at you, Kevin Can Wait. Never forget. Never forget Erin Hayes. Kevin Can Wait season 1.
Kevin apparently couldn't wait, which was the problem.
Yeah. But yeah, it's so that whole thing, they've replaced Sam with Carly's new bestie and roommate, Harper, who is an African American woman, and she has no interest in being a content creator. She is
Mhm.
very happy with her life, working at the Starbucks and getting all the creamer that she could ever love. But it really feels like it was just the Sam character, especially because she has a weird relationship with Spencer, the older brother, which, like,
Yep.
now that they're both adults, you might explore that more between Sam and Spencer. And then you just sort of slot Harper into that role. And it's weird that Spencer's trying to impress her, that her opinion is the only one that matters to her. Because in the old show, that would be like a couple up. Like, it would be Carly, Freddie, and then Gibby, who was another character who, like, was a background joke, who later rose to be sort of a fifth lead in the show, while Sam and Spencer did something together. And it just feels so hollow. Like, I don't know. Like, I wish that they had maybe built that more organically instead of just slotting in another character into the exact same role.
I mean, look, if you were
It
looking for it to be like a groundbreaking, unstructured sitcom, like iCarly was not the place to go.
I,
Like, it's just like
I
I
just
appreciate the idea that you want it to like do something, but I think like one of the pleasures of something like iCarly growing up for people was the fact that there was nothing pushed them. You know, it's sitcoms for kids. You're talking about children's sitcoms. And why do we watch sitcoms? Because everything's okay in the end.
I guess the reason why iCarly hit me the first time, the original iCarly, was because it felt so different from everything else for kids on TV. In this way that, I mean, like, I had watched the Disney stuff kind of get dumbed down. Like, we grew up with, like, Lizzie McGuire and even Stevens, and those had sort of headier themes going on. And
Yeah.
then, it became Bizarre Vark, right?
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
not to use your own words against you, but
Are you kidding
yes.
me? The both of the Paul brothers have been on that show, one in a frequent role. So fuck Bizarre Bark. I'm not here to defend that show.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I'm just making sure. But yeah, that's the thing. And I've only watched the first episode of iCarly revamp. I will be honest with that because it gave me a sour taste in my mouth. Because in addition to the fact that Carly and in turn Miranda Cosgrove has grown and changed so much
Hmm.
in, let's see, it was 6 seasons. So I guess 10 years. I think it's 10 years later. The internet has grown and changed in 10 years. So instead of being a vlogger, she's dating a guy in the first episode, and she thinks that he's going to ask her to start a channel together so that they can have a channel on YouTube. And they keep using channel, but they never use the term YouTube. But
Yeah.
as soon as you're using the word channel, you're thinking Twitch, you're thinking YouTube, you're thinking
Right.
OnlyFans or Pornhub. But it's one of
It
those.
ain't Tumblr anymore.
No, right. But it's not going to be a vlog, right? It's going to be something that, especially because Freddie's little stepdaughter, she has a channel and she only has 2 followers. So, like, it feels like, oh, that could have been the direction to go, is Carly feeling lost and rudderless in the world, helping this kid find her own voice, right? Like, I guess Saved by Bell, the Next Generation style, right? With, like, Screech doing that. It feels so weird that she's, like, lamenting the fact that I want to create content again. And the only reason I'm not creating content is because Sam is gone. And that's the thing. So basically, what Carly Shay wants to do, rather than grow up, right? And I think a lot about Clarissa Explains It All right now. Where, remember that Clarissa Explains It All had a pilot to be an ABC show?
No, right. Yeah. But then it was picked up by Nick, right?
No. I'm talking after 5 seasons of Clarissa Explains It All, right? It had such a, like, not, it was so known that the creators, once Nick said we're done with it, put together a pilot with Clarissa not living at home with the Darling family, but living in, like, a city working as a journalist.
No, I
sort of
do
as
not
like
remember
sex.
that.
Okay, yeah. So
Did that
like,
become like Sabrina or something? Like what?
well,
What happened with
the
that?
reason why she becomes Sabrina is because ABC was all about doing this Clarissa continuation, right? Very much like they were all about doing the Disney's Doug continuation,
Right.
right? We'll take whatever Nickelodeon doesn't want and put it on ABC. But Clarissa was going to be that show that grew up with its audience and be a primetime sitcom. And I don't know what happened. I know that there's a pilot out there where she is essentially a Carrie Bradshaw type, but instead of sex, she's writing about her explanation. She's like Ann Landers, answering questions from people. And it's
Right.
how her life relates to it. So it's kind of like Seinfeld light a little bit. And it doesn't work out, but ABC says, we love you, Melissa Joan Hart. There's some other projects we think you'd be a good fit for. And then she becomes Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Instead
And then we
of
get
Clarissa.
Melissa and Joey.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Okay, all right.
So
Um,
it would be really cool if iCarly and again, I've only watched the one episode, but based on that one episode, it seems like she feels rudderless in her life as an adult, so she's kind of going to go back to that nostalgic thing that made her feel good and create content again. And they don't shy away from the fact that she gets to do that because Spencer is now rich. Because he'd made a marshmallow White House that he accidentally set on fire, and everybody thought it was like this amazing art piece. So now he's insanely wealthy. Like, the whole, you don't need to worry how they can afford this stuff question is answered right in the first episode, which all kind of tells me that your show has an expiration date. Because if you're making good enough content, I don't care that Monica and Rachel live in 4 New York apartments.
yeah, right.
Probably paying for what half of one New York apartment would cost. Regardless.
I mean, especially because one of them is a waitress when that show starts. Oh, wait, they both are.
One of them's a chef. Monica is a chef when the show starts.
But she's not a head chef.
No, she's working in a kitchen trying to become that.
Right.
Yeah, so but that's higher than waitress. You're not making a lot more money, but it's I don't know, it's higher wages but not as instantaneous. And also Rachel, when she becomes a waitress, is a waitress at a coffee shop. It's not like she's a waitress at like a steakhouse in New York City going home with $400 in tips every night.
Yeah, I know, but to your point, it's utterly ridiculous. But you never think about it.
You don't think about it. You don't wonder how is Joey paying for his apartment when he can't act and he's an actor, right? You don't wonder that because you care more about the Friends and you want to see what they're doing. Friends is a really bad example for me because I don't remember it at all. And the family, they're watching it right now. They decided that they're going to watch it because they want to watch the reunion, but Dale doesn't know it. And I watched the first episode because I thought I'd go on that journey with them, and I couldn't. I just can't.
Yeah, also, the reunion was not well received by, like, anybody. I watched 2 minutes of it and decided I couldn't deal with James Corden, who somebody said to me is not in much of it, but enough of it, and I was like, yeah, then I'm definitely not watching it.
Then my 2-minute assessment was correct, somebody. Yeah, so I mean, I'm going to watch iCarly, right? We had the discussion last night that even though the first episode was weird and it's not great that she's just kind of going backwards in life, like, and it just, I don't know, it feels so weird in this world that is now so dominated by nostalgia and reliving your past memories.
Yeah.
That, like, the haunted toilet toy from when we were in kindergarten and from the real Ghostbusters line is now on sale on Walmart shelves for $15.
You have a lot going on in your head, man.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize how much I was picking up over the past week. And this is probably a good point. So there'll be more iCarly talk, but the first episode was very strange. And not strange for any of the reasons that the internet decided to lose their minds over, just in terms of, I feel like you're still treating them like children from a creative standpoint, and they need to be adults. Like, the reason why I'd complain that they're drinking and swearing is because they don't seem like adults. They still seem like children. And I don't know if that's because you're writing them that way or if their motivations are still the same that they were on the original show. It's just, I don't know. But I'll be watching more. If I have Paramount Plus, I might as well watch more, right?
Right.
But yeah, I do have a lot going on in my head, and I'm sorry about that. So I think the best thing to do to wrap this episode up is to go to a place in this world that has nothing going on. I'll be a fucking asshole. I'll call them out. I'm not the first. I won't be the last. E3 2021 happened last week.
It did?
Don't be surprised that I told you that, because
yeah, no, I was gonna say, like, you want to talk about things going nowhere fast, like let's talk about some E3. Yeah, man. Well, so like I think what's really interesting is, and maybe people don't want to beat a dead horse at this point, but like for years people have been talking about how E3 was dying, E3 was dying, E3 was dying, and I think it's dead. I don't think you can call what just happened in the last week E3 as we once knew it. You know, like not only was it just like, oh, we can't get a conference together because of A, B, and C. You know, you can blame COVID all you want, but we're at a point where plenty of people are still getting in rooms together, and that just didn't happen. And then on top of that, not only was there no like physical presence of anything, there also wasn't any digital presence of anything. Everything felt like just like either stuff we already knew, promises of things too far out to talk about, nothing that felt like nothing that wowed me. Like there was nothing that I was like, I wasn't expecting this, so now I am pleased, now I am excited. There's nothing I want to go out and show somebody that's not a fan already, right? Plenty of stuff that I can be like, hey, you guys, you know, we loved Mario Rabbids, guess what, there's a new Mario Rabbids coming. But like even that isn't enough for me to like pull somebody in that I'm like, I know you don't give a shit about this, but I'm so excited I need to just talk at somebody about this. Like that just didn't happen at any point.
For me, right, E3 mostly for me, I want to start with Nintendo, and then everything else sort of was everything else. Nintendo was the only one that really felt like it had anything special going on, as evidenced by the fact that Square
Actual
Enix
content?
Yeah. Well, but like Square Enix had an hour and a half long presentation, and still the stuff that was talked about in that showed up in the Nintendo Direct. So that's not special to me, if I'm going to be completely honest about it. But I want to talk about Nintendo's Direct, and I want to talk about, I'm excited about a new WarioWare game, and I'm excited about how that game looks, but then I'm disappointed that in 2021, it is a couch co-op experience.
Well, it's not just.
Yes.
There's a one-player mode.
Oh, okay.
But then there's
no online, is what I'm saying.
Oh, yes.
There's no online mode. If you want to play it multiplayer, they expect it to be a couch co-op experience.
I guess I can't be too surprised by that, considering how Nintendo still can't figure the internet out. So like I would rather, if there's going to be multiplayer in a like, I have no idea how Mario Party is going to work for them, because they've never gotten this right before. Mario Party seems like the thing they're gambling on, allowing there to be online presence.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what threw me is earlier this year, they announced those 100 new mini games for the existing Mario Party on the Switch and an online mode. And that online mode, for everything that I've seen, works pretty good. So I thought that was kind of Nintendo saying we figured out our problem. Mm-hmm. So, and especially with the new Mario Party that was announced during the Nintendo Direct, that like I want to get excited about, but really they just told us it's coming. I feel like they didn't give us anything concrete about it.
Superstar series?
What?
Like, I mean, the Mario Party Superstars, right? Like that's all of the old N64 stuff. They put all of the stuff up about the mini games that they're putting in it and things like that. They've been releasing things on Twitter with like updated screenshots of like the old mini games and things that have been pretty rad. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I know quite a bit about it. I don't know a date.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't have a date. And that's like the thing. Like at least WarioWare has a date. I
Yeah,
can
but that's because
pre-order
it's coming out so
WarioWare.
soon.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is that like I don't know. Nintendo sort of set themselves up for failure by having such packed beginning years with the Switch that like I wanted more from it, but like but also when your other game is a Mario Party game and one of the big selling points is it's gonna be online, and then your WarioWare comes and it's like it's got multiplayer, but it's
Oh yeah,
was
there's a date.
only local. There's a date.
It's
Okay,
October 29th for Superstars.
okay.
Yeah, and you can pre-order now.
Well then I'm the asshole. I'll take that. My fault for just not. I don't know. Like I want to be excited about it, but then Super Mario Party kind of felt like it did me dirty. I haven't.
I mean, I don't know, man. We've talked before. I love that Mario Party. Like, there's some modes in that are just a fucking blast. You know, like the because you're talking about the latest one for the Switch, right?
Yeah, and I mean
Yeah.
the night that it came out, we hung out at a friend's house. We played through it. We had a great time, but then like it never really had anything to bring me back. I've never owned it. That's the thing. Is like that night was enough to satisfy my feelings about the game.
Did you guys do the river rafting?
Oh yeah, we did
like,
every single course.
Yeah, like every course on the river rafting stuff, going through all of the different the four different boards was a blast for me.
Yeah.
Then there was all of the mini game stuff where you could go in and do just the mini games without having to go through the board game, which was new to me. I guess that's not new to the series, but that was definitely new to me.
Yeah. I mean, we did. I mean, I didn't get home until 10 the next morning. I arrived at my friend's house at 5 p.m. and then we played until 10 in the morning and we did everything. And it was like, that was fun. But, you know, I wish that I didn't always have to use a Joy-Con. Like, there were little concessions. And this new Mario Party feels like it's going to fix those. But I don't want to get excited about it until I get a chance to play it, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm wary about Nintendo. And then WarioWare not talking about online really makes it like, oh, okay. Well, I don't mind because I'm going to play it single player anyway, but it'd be nice, right? I've been wanting a multiplayer WarioWare again, especially after Mega Micro Party games, the GameCube one, that somehow found a way to take WarioWare and make it a kick-ass party experience.
Yeah.
Like, I want more of that, but it's always just sort of been the single-player content experience.
I don't because for me, Game and Wario on the Wii U was something that we used to do drunken party nights. Like at least once a month, we would get together and flick francs and shit. Like that game was awesome.
There's my problem. I never played Game and Wario. It's the only WarioWare game I never get my hands on. It came out too late in the system, and after that, my Wii U was more dust than machine.
Yeah.
And then I sold it to get a Switch. And I don't really regret that. There's some regret because there's some games I'd like to go back to that I know I missed, like the aforementioned Game and Wario. I don't know. It just left me that. But then the big one that like made me sad is Metroid Dread. In that it doesn't really look like a Metroid game.
What does look like a Metroid game to you? Because my first thought was, holy shit, they're doing 2D. It's an actual Metroid game. But I also don't have like the endearing love for the series.
I guess running from robots doesn't really interest me. I mean, there are games where she's running from robots, but it's never been really the 2D ones. It's always been some type of biological threat that she's dealing with. So the fact that it's the robots, and I mean, I'm probably gonna play it, but the other issue that I have with it is it's the art style of Samus Returns, the 3DS one, and that art style left me wanting, and I don't know why. I think just the reboot of it all, like, it's like we're kind of CGI graphics, but in a 2D plane. It doesn't really work for me.
Yeah, Nintendo's been touting that though since Melee, like the ability to do like the 2D environments that flip to a 3D environment. I mean, hell, they made it like the entire concession of one of the Paper Marios that
Super
you could
Paper
do that.
Mario, yeah.
Yeah, but like that idea that like we're gonna flip the camera and suddenly we're in a 3D space is something that they've hung their hat on for a while because they do it and people lose their shit. I mean, I can definitely like hear the hesitation in your voice about this. I can't believe how many people are just like, oh my god, a proper Metroid finally. It's like it's like okay, like I don't have an endearing love for the series, so my first thought was just like this looks like maybe my way in. Like this looks like my way to actually finally play like a proper Metroid game. Um,
I know. I
but
guess
other than that, like I don't have. I wasn't again not so ecstatically excited that I've been showing it off to a bunch of people. So I mean, maybe that says something.
I think where that's the game that seems to be ecstatically excited and shown off in the circles that I see. Like people are talking about it, and people to me just see new Metroid, and I'm like, yeah, but in a weird way, Metroid like Samus doesn't belong to Metroid anymore, and that sounds terrifying. I know that, but like Castlevania kind of picked up where they left it behind for so long with
Yeah.
their like Game Boy Advance and DS versions, and they were so hyped on Metroid Prime, and like I don't know, I just don't know how to feel about Dread. And it really is the art style, and I feel like a jerk saying that, but it's not like, oh my god, I can't believe they did that. It's that I know that art style does not work for me.
Yeah.
If
Well,
that makes sense. Like,
and part of it for you is, and like when the idea of going back to a retro gameplay makes you kind of want that retro game style, and you've always been a sucker for like the old art style of like 18-bit 8-bit 16-bit, like that sense. So if they're already going to make that concession with the gameplay, why not make that also with the art style? And I think there's going to be some discussions about that with this game, is about what does it work in this art style? Does it look as good? One of the big things for me, and maybe I've just seen bad videos of it, but like I don't necessarily love the color palette to the point where everything looks very blown out, like and things like that. So like I definitely have my own trepidations about that sort of stuff for sure. You're not completely alone in that. I just again I don't have the care, the want in my heart for it to be something different.
yeah, that blown out, I think, is what I was getting to in the beginning, that it doesn't feel like a Metroid game, because it feels so sanitized and mechanical, where there was always sort of an organic feeling to the world, like you're on an alien planet,
Yeah.
and you're experiencing different biomes that way. And then even something like Metroid Fusion, which takes place on a space station, the concession on that space station is that it has 6 different biomes based on planets from around the galaxy, so that the scientists can experiment and learn about the local flora and fauna.
Yeah, well, and there's a chance for there to be more than what we saw in the 2-minute trailer that they put out. So like
Right,
that
so
also
that's,
could be something that's coming too.
and I hope so, and it should be what happens. I mean, the Super Metroid starts in a space station, and suddenly you're back on planet Zebes. So it works, and that makes sense. But I don't know. It really is for me though. I wish it were like lushly drawn 2D artwork, as opposed to the Nintendo version of they're 3D but they exist in a 2D plane, because that
Yeah.
never really works for me. And then there's also the moments that feel like Metroid Other M in that 2-minute trailer, where I'm like, that game was terrible.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing, I can't think of anything in that game that worked for me.
Yeah. Hey, I'm trying to think of like, was there anything weird that Nintendo? Because that's the thing that does it for me, is I think the easiest way to show me something that wows me, that I want to then like talk to everybody about, is show me something just wild, buck fucking wild. And like that was what made Mario Rabbids so special when it first came out for me, and made it so easy for me to get into. And then on top of that, it turned out to also just be a really great game. So then like I carried through, and it became the first game that I've ever fully completed on the Switch. And honestly, at the time, I think was one of the first games that I had like 110%ed in a long time, right? And so like that's what I was kind of waiting for, was some like crazy ass thing that Nintendo was going to be putting in front of me. And like the closest maybe was Wario for me.
I mean, the craziest thing I think that they did was Metroid Dread, especially how people have reacted to it.
Yeah.
And then the saddest part about it is like Breath of the Wild 2,
Hmm.
that seemed like their like centerpiece, their big thing, and that just felt like sensory overload. I didn't really feel any sort of way about what happened during that.
I will say that the reveal of like Sky Islands is actually huge when you consider the first preview they showed was all about Zelda and him going underground.
Yeah.
So does that mean that that element's been lost? Does that mean that this element is that it all goes together? The Sky Island stuff is also something that was very, very early on in like the artwork, the pre-release artwork for Breath of the Wild, like specifically Hyrule Castle flying into the air was actually something that for all intents and purposes was supposed to be in the first game, and then kind of got lost over the long development cycle of that game. That's the other reason why I think that I'm not too like latched on to anything with Breath of the Wild 2 yet too, is because so much stuff that they showed that eventually got cut, eventually got pushed or changed because it was just so long until it came out. And like people keep telling me no, but that one's coming out this year, but like I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, I mean, it's not. It's coming out 2022.
Right,
We
but
finally got that, but I get where
yeah.
you're coming from. Yeah, it's it's strange. I mean, what's going to happen is that one is there's been all this rumor about a Switch Pro or a Super Nintendo Switch or whatever it's going to be called, and I think that's going to be the same way that Twilight Princess was a GameCube and Wii exclusive, and then Breath of the Wild was Wii U and Switch. I think Breath of the Wild 2 will be a Switch and a Switch 2. And I think
Switch 2 or Switch Pro? Like what do they call it?
they don't have a name yet. I mean,
The
like,
Switch Up?
I think the Super Nintendo Switch is what they're going to go with.
That would be awesome, actually.
Yeah.
Monkey Ball. That is the thing I think that got me from the Nintendo uh, previews, and that wasn't even technically a Nintendo product, right?
Yeah. And it's strange. I don't know. It's just Nintendo being the last one felt like this is the last chance E3. Wow me. And it didn't.
Mm.
And that's
There's
just
plenty of
that.
other. There was plenty, but like the thing is like it's not that there wasn't cool stuff to see. It's just that anything that I am interested in or thought was cool, I kind of already knew about. Like Psychonauts 2, just as an example, is something they've been talking about for years, and so it was cool to finally see like something of it. But they just did enter the Rhombus a couple of years ago, the VR experience for that.
Mm-hmm.
So like there wasn't, so like from a visual and an art style like element, like there's not too much difference between what we saw in the VR game from a year and a half, 2 years ago to now. So that reveal of like seeing Psychonauts in like new world graphics was kind of lost because of that, right? And so really what I want to do is just get my hands on and play the damn thing at this point. So if they had like said Psychonauts 2 and it's available today, that would have been fucking amazing, right? Obviously, like if they need time to work on the game, they need time to work on the game. I'm not saying like I demand crunch for E3. Like that was part of what killed E3 for a lot of people in the first place, is like people stopped caring about putting their artists through hell just to get a fucking demo out at E3 that was then not going to end up getting to be part of the game because they worked so hard to make something that it didn't work with their actual engines or skeletons of games. But so like Psychonauts 2, I think of Super Monkey Ball. I mean, even Mario Rabbids is fucking wild because they're clearly going in their own direction now with that. It's not just going to be like, here's a bunch of Rabbids doing Mario stuff and a bunch of people in Mario doing toilet jokes. Like, they're actually telling like a really weird story with like the galaxy setting. And I can't even imagine what some of the late game of that is going to be. Make Bowser playable though, please. But like I'm trying to think of some other weird stuff that came up. I finally saw some stuff for Skatebirds, which has been like an indie project on YouTube for a while of people begging for money, and really happy to see that's finally coming out. But that's just like a silly thing. I don't know, man. Now I'm just gonna go through this list.
Go for
Tiny
it. Yeah.
Tina's Wonderland, like I love the D&D DLC from Borderlands 2, and so like making a whole game on that is fucking rad. But again, that was announced before E3. Like I knew about that 2 weeks ago. So like when there was more of that, that's great, but didn't really mean much because I already knew,
I
right?
mean, yeah, ditto with like Elden Ring getting its
Yep.
own sort of like day for people to be excited about it, and then it not being mentioned again at E3 because
Right,
it already
right.
had its day.
Wizard with a Gun, again, they put a preview out for it like 3 weeks ago, I think, 2 weeks ago. That was like a wild thing that would have been really cool. But I also don't blame any of these guys for holding off or releasing early, like not having to do with E3, because E3 has been such a bummer the last few years
Yeah, I
that
mean,
like why
why
would
wouldn't
you?
you hold out until like a week after E3 and then you splash because everybody's kind of wanting?
Yeah.
But I think that the unfortunate thing is everybody has that idea.
Yeah.
So,
Sonic Colors, that's I'm happy to see Sonic is still not dead.
but they announced that earlier too. That wasn't
Yeah.
an E3 announcement.
Yeah. 30th anniversary Sonic comic, by the way. We got to keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. Oh, 30th anniversary of Sonic maybe. His birthday is so weird.
Yeah.
Um what there's Capcom was a little disappointing. I mean, I guess I wasn't expecting like a Mega Man 12, but just DLC for Village is coming.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. And to go
Guardians of the
back,
Galaxy. You'd mentioned Square Enix. Like we should mention like Guardians. Like looks like they were taking a lot of cues from the Spider-Man games. So like that's pretty cool.
it looks like Avengers, but a single player experience.
Okay, but like the thing is like it has nothing to do with the company that made Avengers. So if it gets caught up in that, that is such a shame because it is in no way related to that company in any
I know,
possible
as Crystal
fashion.
Dynamics is nowhere near it. Square Enix as the publisher is it, but it's so hard to look at it and not see.
And it's not Square Enix like making it.
Right,
It's
exactly.
Eidos.
Yeah, I know. It's just, but because Square Enix's name is on both of them, it's this unfortunate thing that's happening. And then even I watching it, I'm like, this is kind of what I wanted Avengers to be, but did Avengers poison the well too much? I mean, eventually I found a way to enjoy Avengers, and I'm kind of excited to play as T'Challa in August. I'm glad that we have a date for the Wakanda DLC, but their whole roadmap has basically been scrapped at this point.
Yeah.
Like they were promising characters every 3 months, and they just don't have the daily logins to warrant that.
After T'Challa, like, is there anyone else announced?
No, T'Challa is the last one announced, and the fact that nobody else was announced after T'Challa
Yeah.
really did say like he's sort of make or break for them. But then there's also talk, and I think what it is that it was Guardians of the Galaxy. People were looking at Guardians of the Galaxy as the evidence of Avengers 2, but like that's where it looks like. It looks like they're going to take everything that they have, kind of keep it where it is, but then release a different game to try to get people.
Destiny 2.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So I don't know. I honestly don't know. There's also Final Fantasy Origins, which the demo is still available on PS4 and 5 through the 25th of June. It's cool. I enjoy it because it is leading into the events of the first Final Fantasy game. The origins of it make sense. It was cool walking into the Temple of Fiends and being like, "Oh God, this is where the game starts in Final Fantasy." It's a little normcore is the complaint that everybody has.
Okay.
And I kind of get that in terms of everybody dressed in fantasy style clothing. Like they dressed like the Renaissance fair in the first Final Fantasy. So it's weird to think that there were 3 dudes who were walking around in t-shirts and jeans and we just never ran into them.
Yeah, I mean it's taking a big in that sense it's taking a big clue from the success of 15 though, and like one of the big things that people loved in terms of like the cosplaying and the fan writing and all and the art of all that was the guys walking around in fucking Hanes like V-necks fighting like mythical creatures with giant swords. So like there is definitely going to be a crowd that's going to call that out, but there's already a bigger crowd waiting to just eat that shit up, and they know that. Like that's not just I'm not even going to say that there's a chance that there's people that like that. We know there is.
So my only hope is, right, I don't know how much you know about the first Final Fantasy game, but it's all about a time loop, a never-ending time loop that expands for 2,000 years.
Right.
So if those guys are in the future and then they kick off the time loop, I'm fine with it. But there's just not enough information yet to for that to be what's about to happen. But it plays cool. It plays like an action game. Not really my style, but I had fun with the demo. I don't know if I'd buy it, but if you liked Final Fantasy VII, I think this is going to scratch that same sort of itch.
You mean the remake? Final Fantasy
the remake,
yeah. Yeah, considering we don't know what the hell's going on with that, sure. I'll tell you the reason why it's not going to go anywhere though is it's a Team Ninja game, so people are already going to just shit all over it.
True. That's wow, look at this guy. Who invited the big-brained guy to the Say Report tonight? Anything else that you want to talk about? Because there's one other thing that I want to address, and it's sort of what won E3 for me.
No, let's do it. What's the big win for you?
Resident City Girls. No, River City Girls 0 and River City Girls 2. Because I love River City Girls, right?
Yeah. So what's the big deal with Resident Evil? You got me doing it now. Yeah. With River City Girls 0.
So, River City Girls 0 is the first time that the 4th game in the Ninketsu High series is going to be localized for an American audience. I played through it right around the same time River City Girls. I played through a Japanese version of it called Banku. Is sort of the big word that people use to describe it, because almost everything about it is just Ninketsu high school rivals, blah, blah, blah. Banku is the only, like, unique word in the Japanese translation.
Yeah. Okay. So is this the game that ties it into some larger world, or like what?
So it is what Banku was, and now River City Girls 0 is the first time that Kyoko and Misako were playable in the series. But it's not their game, strictly speaking. It's the one that finally made Dale and I okay with the ending of River City Girls and the betrayal of the 2 characters. And then when they patched it and put in a good ending if you beat the true final boss, why it made sense for us. And I hope, against hope, but I don't think it will happen, that they're going to tie in Dale and I's fan theory as the actual explanation for what's going on in River City Girls.
Okay.
Because what it is Banku sees Kunio, who is the main character. You know him as Alex if you've only come to the series from River City Ransom. He is a doppelganger of him, is committing crimes, so he is arrested and put in jail, and the game is about him breaking out of jail and trying to clear his name. And along the way, he recruits his friend Ricky, and he and Ricky's girlfriends, Kyoko and Misako, in order to try to find out who framed him and clear his name. And then some other crazy stuff happens. But the big moment, and why I think they're going to be tying it all together, is right before the final stage, Kyoko and Misako are shot by Sabu, the main villain of the entire series. And then it turns out that they're fine at the end of the game. They just fell into comas, and they just came out of the comas.
Okay.
And so once Dale and I played this game in Japanese and then read what happened, we said, oh, so all the events in River City Girls take place while they're in the coma. It's a shared coma experience. And it really makes sense when you consider the question of, like, why is everyone in our town always fighting? Everybody seems so mean and so hostile. And it's literally them fighting to survive after being shot by Sabu, which is why at the end of the game, Sabu is revealed to have been replaced by his daughter, Sabuko. So I really hope that, like, with all this talk of, like, new anime cutscenes being added, because it is just the Super Nintendo game from 1992 that is finally given an official English translation. The gameplay is not going to change. The sprites are not going to change. The only new things is going to be anime cutscenes and a song by Megan McDuffie.
Okay.
So, I don't know, do with that what you will about it. And then you have River City Girls 2, which is interesting because we don't have any footage of these games. Yeah. They were announced during the limited run games presentation, which is games that they're going to be doing physical versions of.
Right.
And that's it. Like, it's not, they're not responsible for making the games. It's just, we're teaming up with Way Forward because they're making River City Girls 0 and River City Girls 2. And I'm excited to have them confirmed more than just rumors on Way Forward's Twitter page. But I don't know. The most exciting thing about River City Girls 2 is that Marion's sprite from the game is, you see her abs is one of the focal points of the announcement picture. So maybe you'll get to play as Marion from Double Dragon.
Okay. I mean, what the fuck, right? Like, it sounds like they're just going to go crazy anime story with this whole thing, and like, for good or for ill. Which means that your theory could either be spot on or not ridiculous enough.
Right. And I'm fine. I mean, I'm excited to play through these games. It's just one of those things where, like, no real release date. They're saying that 0 will be later this year on Switch first, and then maybe other systems. And then River City Girls sometime 2022. So, like, I'm excited about them, but without a trailer. I have 2, like, basically title screen splash teases that I can look at and try to figure out what that will mean going forward.
Yeah. I mean, like, again, it's a lot of excitement over nothing,
and that's what won E3 for me.
Yeah. But I mean, that's what they wanted this year. They wanted a bunch of excitement and then brought nothing to the table. And I say it's the royal they, because the with there not being like an actual factual like E3, it's kind of hard to figure out who to point the finger at here for why this was such a bust. Because like without some force saying to everybody, like, okay, we need to have something for this. This needs to be the structure here. We need to have people excited at this moment. We need to give them a break here. We need to think like, and there was nobody orchestrating that this year. There couldn't have been, at least not in the capacity of having people in a physical space. And we knew that was going to happen eventually with E3, because we've been saying for years that the physical, like in-person E3 was just going down the tubes as it was. But it's like they made no effort to bother orchestrating a digital experience that mirrored that, or in some way like grew from that.
Yeah, because it would be nice if they had demos available. The one that really slayed it is Square Enix having a demo for Final Fantasy Origins available, and I don't even know how to begin to approach Microsoft's whole 6 like major titles released on Xbox Game Pass on the first day of their release. Like, that's what I feel like is the pervading message from E3. But then those games don't look like they're anywhere near done.
Yeah.
So it's like
without somebody there getting their hands on them to tell us whether or not we should care, right? Like they seem to think that not having a physical E3 means they could cut out the middleman of game journalism, but honestly, like, no, because that's what helped disseminate information to me, the audience. You can't just ignore the games journalist. It's just you needed to figure out a different way to interact with them. And, I think they made I think they made a big old whoopsie. I think that this felt like a bunch of people handing in fucking assignments that were done at the last minute just to get them handed in, and without a TA there to like filter it. Me as the fucking teacher, I'm just like, this is a goddamn fucking mess. And so now it's either everybody gets an A because I don't feel like looking through this, or I talk about what a shit class this was this year, and I'm taking the latter.
Yeah. And it really feels like in the wake of all the games journalists' information being leaked by E3 in 2019, and then not having one next year, with this being the whimper when it needed to be a roar, I honestly can't see E3 being a thing that continues very much longer.
Yeah.
And honestly, why would it? It's not a thing that's necessary. I mean, Sony understands that. That's why they do their own things. But then Nintendo's like, oh, we're going to do what Sony does, but we want to have our cake and eat it too. But then if you're not going to release a Nintendo Direct for like 4 months, it better be a pretty solid thing during E3.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. Oh, I guess Advance Wars Remake, that everybody seems upset that it's going to be $60. But it's two $30 games. They were $30. You get Advance Wars and Advance Wars 2 with updated graphics for $60. I mean, that seems like the right price for it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to talk about supporting like game makers and about how artists shouldn't be treated like this, and this until the time comes to actually put your money where your mouth is and actually buy a game. And I'm not saying that like people out there that can't afford games, like there needs to be an avenue for them as well, but like we cannot keep being surprised when Nintendo says, hey, we're going to put 3 games onto a disc and we're going to have to charge you $60 for it, like, and then people are like, oh, all they did was just put the same games out, why do I have to pay this much money for it? Or the digital excuse, if I'm buying it digitally, why do I have to spend the same amount of money as somebody buying it physically? Don't they save money somewhere along the line? And it's like, well, yeah, but the money that they save not physically printing a disc, they then have to put towards server space. So pick your poison. Like you still have to pay for something.
Yeah. I honestly don't know. That's the one, like Advance Wars, I'm kind of excited to play it again. It's something that I will probably end up getting. Maybe not the day it releases, but if I find it for $30 at Target someday, and it's not about the price. I would pay $60 for it. It's about my own interest in Advance Wars. It's about it not being a game that like I ever saw there being a need to own. If that makes sense. Like I borrowed it from a friend and I played it and I'm like, this is cool. I'm not really a real-time strategy guy, but this is what it is. And what Advance Wars really was a way to introduce Fire Emblem to the West.
Yeah, yeah.
In terms that we would understand, like tanks and planes, and then turning that into horses and cannons. And then they did that. So it's cool that they're calling back to the thing that was really sort of created as a Trojan horse to keep all the war metaphors together.
With that in mind, release Pilot Wings, you cowards.
A new Pilot Wings would be pretty awesome. And if it is going to be the Super Nintendo Switch, that would be a great intro game.
Yeah.
Like it's time for another Pilot Wings. All right, there's one other thing I need to talk about because I just want to talk about it and be done with it and never have to revisit it on the show. Do you have anything else or can I roll into it?
No, go ahead.
So Cyber Shadow is a game that we've talked a lot about on the Say Report this year. And actually going back 2 years when I first played it at PAX East in Boston. So Cyber Shadow... for a long time, they were talking about a patch coming out to address some of the issues with the game. And kind of big issues like going from a dash and it putting you into slow speed. Slow motion is the word I was looking for, or like you jumping off a wall and your double jump just failing because you came off of a wall. Like, fairly impressive glitches that needed to be addressed and that they were aware of fairly early on. But then bigger than that, and talking about hot fixes with Steam, the PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox versions of the game never had the initial patch that was pushed out to Steam after 2 weeks. So they were still running on that original day one hardware when there had been some kind of nice fixes to things in the game put into it. So now they said with the next patch, we're going to make sure it's available for everything. And they decided to drop it during E3, which makes sense. Yacht Club didn't have anything else. Shovel Knight Dig, we still have no idea what or when that is. So let's at least shine some light on us with Cyber Shadow. But they went a step further than just the patch coming out. They turned it into Ready Player One. And
what?
I've been saying Ready Player One a lot, but the central conceit of that story is that there are 3 Easter eggs that are hidden in the virtual world.
Oh, okay. Yes,
and the
Willy
first
Wonka
person,
golden ticket.
yeah.
Like, all right, okay, yeah.
And the first person to find those Easter eggs will, own the universe in that one. Cyber Shadow did that same thing. Now, I'm in a Discord because I was speedrunning it, so talking to people, learning tech, that's part of it if you're going to speedrun a newer game. And they'd been told by the creator that there was a secret that they had missed, right? So there was a whole channel dedicated to looking for secrets. And they never found it. And they were told that once the new patch drops, we would be given a hint as to where that secret was. Turns out, and this has been proven, they were adding these Easter eggs. But they do still believe, the people in the Discord, that there is still the original final secret that has not been found. I don't know if that's true or not, but the announcement of this patch came with hints from Yacht Club Games as to where to find these Easter eggs. And their plan was, for the next 5 weeks, we're going to give clues to where they are and how to access them, and the first person to do it will get their name immortalized in the credits of our game the next time we release a patch. So maybe never you're going to get that prize based on how they've been releasing patches so far, but
Right.
what you going to do when she says goodbye? What you going to do when she is gone? And it took them 9 hours to find all 3 Easter eggs, the people in the Discord.
See, I think you did yourself a disservice because you split the difference between those. They said over the next 5 weeks we're going to give you hints. The Discord figured it out in 9 hours.
Yes. Yeah, I should have put those back to back. The Discord figured it out in 9 hours. And they submitted as a group, right, to try to do it. And it was announced today that they were not the first people to find all 3 eggs. And they don't know, if maybe somebody was just like lurking in the Discord. And that's the other thing. You want to see like weird paranoia is these guys thinking that someone must have been lurking and buying off of the information that we had and then submitted once we had it. Like, it's scary. It is scary to see that type of state recreated in a communal chat room.
Great. So now we've gone from Ready Player One to basically Digital Purge.
Yeah. And by all accounts, it's just, no, they just got it before us, and that's it. But because I haven't played the game, I said I would do another 100% run once it was released. I did that today, and that's what 207 meant. It took me 2 hours and 7 minutes to complete it. And since my fastest time on any leaderboard is 141, maybe 142, let's say 142, just round it up. That's not because those secrets are that hard to find, is because I was out of practice at the game. Like, one of the bosses just gave me a hard time. I was
Yeah,
not prepared for it.
from the screenshots that you were sending of where the eggs were located, it didn't look like anything was in too crazy of a place that like you wouldn't be able to get there. You know what I mean? Like it didn't feel like it was like, oh well, you need to blow up this wall, a la like Arkham City, in order to see the plans, right? Like that's it didn't feel like any of that sort of hiding. That's the other thing. On top of everything, it felt really weird, like weirdly out in the open, I guess is the best way of putting it.
So the weirdest one is the first Easter egg. And the reason why I call it Ready Player One, because Ready Player One, you have to go backwards at the start of the race game in order to find the Easter egg. That's like the whole big thing.
Right.
And if at the start of the game you head to the left instead of the right, you'll hear like a switch depress. And if you jump where you heard that, eventually a button appears on the wall and you hit that button and it opens up a room where you can change the color of the ninja character. Cyber. That's his actual name is. Or maybe it's Shadow. Regardless. That's what you find. And everybody thought that was just what the egg was a way to change the color of the character. It wasn't until later when they found an actual egg item in one of the other locations that they realized we missed something there.
Yeah.
And that is the one that is just banana pants. Because what you have to do is run left, right laps in that room in order to have the egg appear.
I mean, like, I guess it's cool that that's in the same room that you can like change your color or whatever. It's just so weird to me because it feels, on top of the fact that they completely misjudged the intelligence of their audience and the communal like sensibilities of their audience, they also really overestimated themselves. And I guess that could that could be obvious all around. But like the complexity of these Easter eggs and the joy and the meaning of these Easter eggs does not seem to be on the level that they assumed it was. Like it's not bringing you to like a cool new place that like it shows you more of the story. It's not. There's nothing. To me, what I'm saying is there's nothing fun about looking for these Easter eggs.
No, not really. Like they made it a competition, and that was how they tried to make it fun. And I found the 3 locations. I needed help to find the first one. I will not lie about that. That first one, that was a little heady. But the second location, I found that on my own.
Not heady. Bullshit.
Yeah. Okay. I found that on my own, and then I solved the puzzle in that room, which involves there's 4 doors, and you need to go through the doors in a certain order, and it's imperceptible little changes that show you're in a different room. And as opposed to coming out in the same room with the 4 doors. Like, that was a kind of cool thing, and it felt good when I solved it on my own. And then the last one, they added a symbol of the swag blade in the 9th level, and if you can get a swag blade there, and that's where everybody was kind of losing their mind, was like, how am I going to do that? There's so much level to get through. And I'm like, well, I have a swag blade unlocked right in the level beforehand. And at the end of the game, you can get one for free. And then, like, you just warp back there? Like, I noticed the symbol and I went back there with the blade. And then you just have to hit 4 buttons at the same time using the swag blade.
Mm.
So, like, it didn't feel as complex as any of the other ones. It really felt like, oh, shit, we need 3 eggs because there's 3 eggs in Ready Player One.
Oh, man.
And then what you unlock is a Link-style sword blast when you're at full health. But, Sejohn, you want to talk about how much they underestimated their people? It was going to be 5 weeks of clues, right?
Yeah.
And then the competition was going to run through January 4th, 2022.
What?
They thought that they would have to give themselves a full 6 months where people might not be able to locate these things.
Somebody somebody at that company had to say something. Somebody had to be like, guys, this is not going to work. And they had to be quietly escorted off the premises or some shit, right? That's insane. That's insane.
All right, so here's a thing that I'm going to talk about. And this is where I think we're going to be putting Cyber Shadow to bed with this, right? I really do want this to be the last one. Begrudgingly, because I was so wanting for this new patch to come out that was going to address like some pretty big issues that I had with the game. Sure, I could run it, but like it sucked when I was in a pretty good run and then suddenly I was stuck in slow motion after a dash. Like that's not fun. That's not an enjoyable thing to have happen if you've ever run a game or tried to do something.
I had an entire Hulk boss fight in slow motion that time in Avengers. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's not fun. And it's like, and when you're like trying to shave off seconds of gameplay, it's frustrating, right? And also, I'm addressing this part too. The tournament that I was going to compete in is not over, but now everybody has to play on this new patch because there's no real way to not download it.
Yeah.
Like, so it's one of those things where they learned one way and now slight things, like there are enemies that have been removed from the game.
Oh, man.
It's so, but that's another thing. Like I felt like I made the right choice to step out of this tournament because not that I saw this coming, but the fact that it did happen, that would have disappointed me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was watching Yacht Club Games specific sponsored streams of Cyber Shadow, right? Their channel on Twitch, their people talking about the game. And I went there and I'm like, do you guys have any information that you can share about when the new patch is going to drop? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, so I should be done. But then the guy's trying to do an all feats run. He's trying to unlock all the in-game trophies for the game, sort of like with Shovel Knight. And he's having issues. And then I found myself giving this guy advice on how to complete stuff. And it was kind of fun. But now in retrospect, when I look at how they approached these 3 Easter eggs that were solved, and nothing like too crazy. Like it was nothing like you need to unboot the game and then boot back into it, right? Like there's no Psycho Mantis level thing in any of these Easter eggs. Right, exactly. There's no Castlevania Simon's Quest. You have to stand in a place for 10 seconds. Like, none of those happen. And it's disappointing that none of those happen. That, like, oh, this guy not knowing how to complete feats in the game from the company that he's working for? That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it shines a light on the on the workplace communication there. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just, I beat it today with the 207. I don't know if I'm ever going to do another 100%. I don't know if my 100% run that's out there is going to be invalidated because the eggs were not part of it because they didn't exist at the time. But it's just weird. It's weird on the heels of Astalon and talking about Astalon and all of that to have this game like just drop. And what the patch did was try to add a competition to like also drive sales of the game too, because the same post about it was like, and it's on sale at all these places, and it was a 10% discount. It's not like it was like a crazy discount. Like
no,
it was just enough to stay.
They very clearly expected people to be like, I got to get in on this like 2 months from now, and now people are just going to forget about this game in 2 weeks.
Yeah. I don't know what, I'm excited to see what happens with the clues tomorrow. But I don't know. It was such a like weird whiplash thing. And then it drove me into Demon's Souls. Like my weird abusive relationship that still feels comfortable. And I got the platinum in Demon's Souls finally. Because I knew that it was just going to be the stuff that like, it's kind of tedious. I have to play through the game a bunch of times to get this all done. But it felt nice to like play a game like that again.
Nice. Good, man. Good. I'm glad you could go home to daddy.
Oh no, Demon Daddy. Yeah. So that's it. So, oh man, Ixnay on the Zombre is so much better than just your Resident Evil Ixnay. I'm sorry. It's the perfect name for the 9th Resident Evil game. And if they don't use it, like, you missed the opportunity there, Capcom. Pretty big one.
Congratulations, Capcom. I made a bigger splash than your entire E3.
All right. So, anything else that you'd like to add?
No, not at all.
Right. I saw The Fugitive for the first time. That's a legit movie, and it still works in 2021. We can talk more about that next week.
Jesus, Dev. All right. Yes.
Yeah, there's the teaser for next week. But if you would like to give Sejohn your own opinions about E3, you can find him on Twitter at Siege versus the World.
And if you all want to start pushing Dev to now go watch U.S. Marshals, you can hit him up at Devon D. Decker.
All right, so spoilers for next week. I saw U.S. Marshals 4 times in theaters. But I never saw The Fugitive until this past Saturday. Yeah.
TV show? All right, never mind. We're not doing this now. We'll do it next week.
All right. Oh, and I guess the last thing is very special episode dropping on Thursday is about Chuck E. Cheese and his summer of fun. So make sure you're there to find out what the heck that could mean. All right, Will, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.